And that brings us to this story. It's out of Minnesota, where an illegal migrant was apparently using a stolen identity to remain here in the United States, despite being deported 3 times, and it totally ruined another man's life.
Right, Todd Piro talks about it.
I think we can all put ourselves in the position of this guy and say, what if this happened to us? Take a listen. The New York Times reporting that this years-long case of apparent identity fraud, titling the piece, 2 men, 1 identity, they both paid the price. Now, in this piece, the Times argues that thousands of illegal immigrants rely on fraudulent security numbers to get by in our country. The problem is one of those fraudulent numbers belonged to a Minnesota father by the name of Dan Kluver. He's an upstanding citizen by all accounts. Time says he never fired a gun, missed a payment, or even been arrested for anything before. Quote, Kluver has lived in rural Minnesota for decades, but his Social Security number was being used for jobs in other parts of the country. He traced 15 years of records and found more tax documents listing unfamiliar jobs at a cement plant in Kansas, a paper mill in Tennessee, a construction company in Ohio, cereal factory in Nebraska, and a dog food plant in Missouri. It's like I've lost all control over who I am, Kluver said. The government estimates that as many as 1 million undocumented workers are using fraudulent or stolen Social Security numbers. But in this case, the particular migrant who had been using Kluver's identity ran into some trouble. The Guatemalan national was involved in a crash that killed a grandfather and injured his 9-year-old granddaughter. Quote, the girl sustained minor injuries, but the 68-year-old man flew off the bike, broke his pelvis in 2 places, struck his head, and died. The driver stayed on scene, praying and cooperating with the police as he handed over a license and registration for Dan Kluver. He was cleared of any wrongdoing. The crash was ruled an accident, but the victim's family had filed a wrongful death lawsuit with Kluver listed as the defendant. Kluver told the Times reporter, quote, just keeps getting more unbelievable. I can understand doing whatever you have to do to provide for your kids, but now somebody's death is attached to my name. This migrant had been deported back to Guatemala in 2005, 2008, and 2009, but each time he returned to the U.S. and purchased a new ID for work. Back over to you.
It's amazing you can do that. It's amazing this guy did that, and it's amazing there is more outrage about that. If you look at the New York Times story, it's almost even. Like, I can understand how you might be inconvenienced, and I can understand why he would do it.
Like both men had equal rights to this identity.
It's crazy.
So Dan Kluver, you could probably relate to this. He's lived in this town, Olivia, Minnesota, for 40 years, worked at the same factory his dad did. He coaches baseball on the weekends. He teaches Sunday school, never been arrested, never gotten in trouble, never even smoked a cigarette. And the cop comes up to his car and pulls him over and says, your license has been suspended. You have another driver's license in Missouri. He said, I've only been there a few times in my life. I don't have a license in Missouri. And so he said, oh, my gosh, this is what's happening to me. He said he's received letters of wages earned in different towns, collection notices for debt, tax audits. He was so frustrated, and he couldn't get to the bottom of it, and he couldn't find out how to get his identity back from this illegal immigrant. So his wife just said, you know what, let's just pay the $6,000 in fines. Guess what happened the next year? They got more fines for $22,000 that this other person who was using his identity owed.
Yeah, and so the New York Times, of course, treating these as equal people, writes in the paper. The judge ruled that he could return home with an ankle monitor until his next court date, as long as he stopped using Kluver's name and Social Security number. That meant he could no longer work, so he spent his afternoons in a dark living room with Bible quotes printed on the walls, doing puzzles with his 4-year-old, while the rest of the family came and went. His wife cleaned houses, his daughter washed linens at the hotel, and 2 of his sons worked in restaurants, but it still wasn't enough to make up for the lost income in Kluver's
So he had to stay home and not use his name.
Yeah, so he's the victim. And at one point, it becomes so crazy, the illegal is making more money than the real Kluver. Yeah. And so Kluver winds up on the hook for the taxes, for the money that this illegal has made. And yet the New York Times frames this as being, he's just the illegal is the victim here.
He, like Todd
J.D.
said,
Vance wrote, what shameful framing from the New York Times. No kidding.
Like Todd said, DUIs, deported 3 times, some of his Social Security numbers connected to child support and other debts. Got in that accident where the grandfather died. He has 5 children, ages 4 to 19. And it talks in the article about at the age of 16, he hiked out of Guatemala. He rode on top of a train across Mexico for 3 weeks, nearly drowned in the Rio Grande, took a Greyhound into America and bought IDs to work at this
like we care about his horrible plight. This is when people say that illegal immigration is a victimless crime.
Right, exactly.
I think you're insane, number one. And number two, this is a case in point. No, well, the New York Times needs to fully understand the story.